Now all of us were waiting for this. China had properly responded to NATO, but will India respond too? India has finally hit back. Here you can see, caution against double standards. India has directly told NATO, don't keep double standards. We are cautioning you, we are warning you. Because if you remember, NATO had warned India that within 50 days, if a ceasefire is not achieved with Russia, if Putin is not called, if the Russia-Ukraine war doesn't end, then sanctions will begin and it will hit India hard, China hard, Brazil hard. So India has openly said here, we are warning you, don't hold double standards. This kind of game won't work. And here you can see a lot of articles have been published on this. For the first time, we are seeing an India-RIC, NATO situation on the geopolitical stage. And none of this needed to happen. India's relations with NATO are actually quite good. Most NATO countries are quite friendly toward India. But Donald Trump and his allies in the USA, his policy is such that he talks about imposing 500% tariffs on India. And NATO chief Mark Rutte also parroted Donald Trump's words and warned India. His video came out and many people in India got angry watching that video. And suddenly now we are seeing India for the first time giving a strong reply to NATO. My job is to monitor energy supply and energy markets. Make sure we have an energy supply. The worry, I think you can see it on my face. The way I am part of this, the worry is visible. I've been with you since morning. I said, my mind is not wired for that kind of worry. First of all, regarding the oil issue, India has openly said that there is no worry. Whatever happens, there are so many oil suppliers in the market today that oil needs will be fulfilled. At the same time, India has also made a statement that double standards will not work. This duplicity that is going on, this won't work. And that duplicity is regarding this issue. If you read even the 2024 reports, Europe has spent more money buying oil and natural gas from Russia than it has given in aid to Ukraine to fight Russia. And since Europe takes care of its energy needs, India also has every right to prioritize its energy needs above all. Here you can see the statement from the Ministry of External Affairs, reports on the subject, and are closely following the developments. Let me reiterate, and I have said this in the past as well, securing energy needs of our people is understandably an overriding priority for us. In this endeavor, we are guided by what is there on offer in the markets, as also by the prevailing global circumstances. We would particularly caution against any double standards on the matter. A strong answer has been given here. And if you are thinking, wait, Europe has also purchased a lot of oil and natural gas from Russia in 24, then let me show you a report. Here you can see an article from The Guardian. It was published 4 months ago and clearly. Just read the headline. European Union spends more on Russian oil and natural gas than financial aid to Ukraine. Now you tell me, if they are giving more money to Russia than to Ukraine, then who is really financing Russia here? And these reports are available everywhere. You can go to the website of the Center for Research on Energy and Clean Air. You will find all the reports there. This report clearly says that EU member states purchased 22 billion worth of oil and natural gas in the third year of war. 3 years have passed since the Russia-Ukraine war. They didn't stop in the first year. Even in the second year, they couldn't stop buying oil and gas. Now it's the third year, and still they're buying. And here you can see the amount is significantly greater than the 18.7 billion EU allocated to Ukraine in financial aid in 2024. And the article I showed you is from Western media. It is well known that even today Europe is directly buying oil and natural gas from Russia. So targeting India, China, Brazil with 500% tariffs, it doesn't make any sense. This is literally double standards. Now you can understand why it's being said these are double standards. Because for themselves, they have one standard. What we do is fine, what you do is not. The world doesn't work that way. Now I'm seeing, since these tariff threats are increasing, and again I will say, these are not small tariffs. 500% tariffs are humongous. In response to that, China's foreign ministry from its official account has openly stated that Russia-India-China cooperation, the Rice Triangle, must be revived. From this cooperation, not only do the three countries benefit, but regional and global peace, security, stability, and progress are also ensured. China stands ready to maintain communication with Russia and India on advancing the trilateral cooperation. Now think about it. Trump's foreign policy is such that China is openly saying this. It's been 5 years. During Biden's tenure, the Rice Triangle was almost dead after the Galwan clash. Since then, there has been no real dialogue. Now, after 5 years, we're seeing a revival of this group. And if you check Indian media today, you'll find articles everywhere about RICE. They are being published constantly. Times of India reports that in a mutually convenient manner, RICE can be revived. Ministry of External Affairs has responded positively, saying yes, we are interested in reviving the RICE trilateral dialogue. You can see it here because again, when NATO chief directly targets India, Russia, and China, since they want Russia to stop selling oil, India and China being the biggest buyers of Russian oil and gas, these three countries will come together. And let me tell you, if Western countries remain adamant on this 50-day issue, that within 50 days there must be a ceasefire, it's said goodbye. The world doesn't work like that. They are moving far from reality. And I fear that in the midst of all this, we may not fall into a global economic problem. Donald Trump is taking a lot of risks. His foreign policy seems all over the place. One month he says one thing, next month something else. Meanwhile, if US foreign policy think tanks and the State Department feel that Trump's experiments are failing, that whatever he's trying is backfiring, then what the US tried for years to keep India, Russia, and China apart, they are now forming their own group. I don't think it will be surprising at all. In matters of foreign policy, Donald Trump must either be told to follow the already running foreign policy or stop experimenting, because he's causing decades of damage to the USA. Now here, I want to ask you a question. India's strategy is clearly visible. You'll see even in India, articles are being published saying India has questioned NATO chief, warned them not to function with double standards, and at the same time, signaled both NATO and the US that RICE talks will restart, the matter that had gone cold for 5 years. Suddenly, RICE is right in front of you. If you feel uneasy watching BRICE, then simply imagine a platform where Indian, Russian, and Chinese leaders are standing together, shaking hands, talking. USA will suddenly feel that all the progress they made in foreign policy is now being undone altogether. So here, I want to ask you, do you genuinely support the idea of RICE? Do you believe that reviving RICE in the future is important? Or do you believe that China will use this as an excuse? China is openly supporting Pakistan. So if we start talks under RICE now, then India's stance against China internationally will be weakened. I'd love to hear your opinion. RICE talks are most probably going to be revived since Putin is also visiting India this year. Are you in support of it? Or do you believe that any group involving China will eventually bring problems? So reviving RICE is not a good idea. Write your thoughts in the comments section. I'd love to know your opinion. And finally, here's an MCQ for all of you. The question is, recently, a country has launched a satellite called Dhruvan for war preparation. In the upcoming time, in a potential big war, this satellite will play a critical role. It's being called the smartphone in space, an ultra-modern satellite, and it is incredible. Tell me, which country has launched the Dhruvan communication satellite? Your options are China, Israel, France, or India. Answer in the comments. Whoever gives the right answer, I'll heart it so others can know what the right answer is. Look, I believe if today you are not using artificial intelligence in your work, you are living in another era. With the help of AI, you can do many jobs. You can earn a lot of money. You can upskill yourself. For example, suppose I want to show Captain America eating vada pav on a busy Mumbai street with some very attractive text that says yummy. I can easily do that with the right prompt. And as you can see here, it was just that easy. You can create many variants. If I want to animate this image, like you're seeing on the screen, I can animate it using many generative AI tools. I can create a story. I can pretty much do anything. And this is just a very small aspect of generative AI. With generative AI, you can write books. You can create personalities. You can pretty much do anything you want. And if you've taken the right generative AI course, I'll tell you, you can work as a prompt engineer. Yes, a prompt engineer. Many don't even know this job exists. Many people easily earn 6.5 lakh per year. Yes, I'll only tell you realistic salaries. Many people out there will say take our course and you'll earn 25, 30, 50 lakh. I'll only tell you what's realistic. Google prompt engineer. Prompt engineer jobs typically pay around 4 to 6.5 lakh depending on your experience. And you can start your career. You can start your own AI startup. You can become a content creator. You've seen how much I use AI in content creation. You all know. So, if you want to learn generative AI in a professional manner through live classes, where there's a teacher in front of you where you can ask them why a prompt was used a certain way, or what would happen if you added something else. If you want to understand all this, Career 247 has launched the Generative AI course. You simply need to go to the video's comment section. There you'll find a link, or Generative AI for All. Please note, we've specifically named this course Generative AI for All. Whether you're a beginner, unemployed, employed, want to upskill, or a content creator, basically whatever your study background, Career 247's Gen AI for All will help you a lot. And at the end of this program, you'll even do a project on how to start your own AI startup. You'll also learn how to use all these tools, ChatGPT, Midjourney, DALL-E, various generative AI tools. You'll learn how to use them all at Career 247. Just enter your name, email ID, number, and don't forget the discount code PD10. So here's a golden opportunity in front of you. Generative AI courses are available all over the world, but one that gives you live classes, projects, certification from NASSCOM. This is rare. So if you want to enroll, start your journey in generative AI. Thanks for listening. And as I always say, may God's watch over. The larger concern now rests on how nations balance their sovereign interests in a world that increasingly punishes independence. India, by refusing to cave into pressure, has demonstrated that its foreign policy today is no longer tethered to appeasing global blocs. The era of silent compliance has ended. Whether it's energy procurement or strategic alliances, New Delhi is carving out its space unapologetically. When NATO warns of sanctions, implying punitive measures unless India distances itself from Russia, the hypocrisy becomes evident. How can Europe, which continues to fund its own war, time energy requirements by importing from Russia, expect India to walk away from affordable oil and gas that sustains its economy and keeps inflation in check for over 1 billion people? India's reply wasn't an outburst. It was a measured assertion. The message is simple: national interest takes precedence, not selective moral lectures from powers that themselves violate the standards they set for others. If the European Union can purchase $22 billion worth of energy from Russia in the third year of war, while allocating just $18.7 billion in aid to Ukraine, what does that reveal? It reveals the mechanics of realpolitik. Aid may win headlines, but fuel runs economies. And India is now echoing what has long remained unsaid. Don't preach what you don't practice. These are not just double standards. They're systematic contradictions wrapped in diplomatic language. China recognized this shift and immediately responded with a diplomatic opening, advocating for the revival of the Rice Triangle: Russia, India, China. After years of silence following the Galwan conflict, and with geopolitical tensions rising, this move isn't coincidental, it's calculated. China knows that if India is forced to choose sides, either the Western-led bloc or an Asian-led coalition, the balance of power in the region would shift dramatically. The idea of RIC is not new, but its reawakening at a time when NATO is posturing more aggressively suggests a realignment is underway. What makes this moment particularly significant is the convergence of strategic isolation and opportunity. The West's pressure is inadvertently pushing India, Russia, and China toward coordination. For decades, US foreign policy invested heavily in keeping these three nations apart. A wedge here, a defense pact there. Diplomatic praise on one side and condemnation on the other. It was all meant to ensure that no Eurasian alignment could threaten Western dominance. But if the West's own incoherence results in these three powers coming together, it would represent a fundamental shift in the international order. India isn't committing to anyone blindly. What we are witnessing is not an alliance formation, but a recalibration. RIFI doesn't have to mean a power bloc like NATO or BRICS. It can simply be a conversation among equals who share regional stakes. Energy security, economic stability, counterbalancing US-led trade and tech restrictions, all are legitimate areas for trilateral cooperation. The idea that India must not even speak to China because of border disputes ignores the complexity of modern diplomacy. Dialogue isn't endorsement. It's strategic necessity. China, too, benefits from this engagement. Its open invitation to maintain communication with India and Russia is as much about projecting diplomatic maturity as it is about safeguarding its own regional influence. Beijing knows that a unified RICE can challenge the global narratives dominated by the West. And in an increasingly polarized world, alliances are no longer binary. They are fluid, transactional, and interest-based. India's geopolitical signaling extends beyond oil and sanctions. When NATO chief Mark Rutte echoes Donald Trump's rhetoric of 500% tariffs on Indian goods, it's not just economics. It's humiliation masked as policy. Tariffs of that magnitude are more than protectionist, they are punitive. Yet India didn't react emotionally. It didn't threaten back. Instead, it used diplomacy to expose the inconsistency. If Europe continues to fund Russia through energy imports, how does it retain the moral right to punish others for doing the same? This isn't just about oil, it's about independence. It's about asserting that India is not a pawn in another nation's war game. It's about reminding the world that 1 billion plus people will not suffer economic hardship to validate someone else's geopolitical choices. The world has changed, and India is not afraid to say no. The revival of rice isn't necessarily a rebuke of the West. It's a statement that India will talk to all, align with none permanently, and act on its own priorities. Even if uncomfortable for the US or Europe, India's balancing act between East and West is rooted in realism. The pressure campaign of with us or against us is failing. As the global South asserts itself, India is becoming a symbol of multipolar confidence. At the core of all this lies the message that global diplomacy cannot run on threats alone. Warning India of consequences if it doesn't behave according to Western timelines, such as achieving a ceasefire in Ukraine within 50 days, is not just unrealistic. It's arrogant. These conditions are not conducive to trust. They diminish space for neutrality and push nations toward reactionary positions. And the irony, if these same policies backfire and bring India, China, and Russia closer, the West will have only itself to blame. Even India's public narrative has matured. National discourse is no longer shaped solely by Western headlines. Indian media has begun asking hard questions. Why should India be bullied for trading with Russia when the West continues to do the same? Why should India stop energy imports when its own people face rising inflation and industrial needs? These are valid, sovereign questions, and they deserve sovereign answers, not coercion masked as cooperation. Meanwhile, in the shadow of this escalating pressure campaign, the global economy sits on edge. Tariff wars, energy disruptions, sanctions, and diplomatic confrontations all have cumulative effects. If Trump's policy experiments continue unchecked and unsettle the fragile balance that global supply chains and finance depend on, the repercussions could be enormous. And unlike past decades, this time the global South is unlikely to bear the costs silently. They will respond. India has shown that response can be principled, rational, and firm. In this unfolding landscape, the US foreign policy establishment faces a tough choice. Either accept that India is a partner, not a proxy, or risk losing it to rival spheres of influence. And if the latter happens, it won't be due to India's choices. It will be because of strategic overreach and failure to treat India as an equal. This moment is not just about diplomacy, it's about respect. Nations are no longer willing to be lectured into obedience. The ice triangle, dormant for half a decade, suddenly reappears, not as a counterweight to NATO or the West, but as a natural response to coercive diplomacy. Its resurgence is both a reaction and a reassertion, a reminder that global power is no longer a monopoly. While Trump may believe that intimidation leads to influence, the opposite is often true. It leads to resistance. And when resistance comes from a country like India, it has ripple effects across the entire global South. Others watch. Others follow. This isn't just a shift in alliances, it's a shift in ideology. The old world order, built on the presumption that power flows from the West outward, is being questioned. India, by engaging Russia and China on its own terms, is saying that the global narrative can no longer be one-dimensional. Multipolarity isn't just a dream, it's becoming a strategic reality. It's being constructed brick by brick through oil deals, diplomatic signals, and policy independence. And it's not waiting for anyone's permission.